Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Batwoman. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, it seems like Gotham has a vampire problem because, well, no surprise, it's Gotham. There's a woman named Nocturna where she basically drains people of their blood and everything. We never actually got to find out, what her fangs were made of. They never made a point. I wonder, how did that whole situation come about? I mean, especially because it's they had to be they're definitely fake, but it's how did she do it? How she laced them with ketamine? Because we end up finding that out being a thing later on after, because it's interesting because Luke is trying to put this case in front of Kate because she needs Kate, distracted from the fact is well, she tried to save Beth, that didn't work out, now Beth's dead, and now Alice blames her because it's wait, you try to save a different version of me, I'm your actual sister and you didn't save me, you actually left me to die. So now Kate's dealing with that whole guilt situation, especially now because she knows Alice is going to come after them full force because of this. So the fact of the matter is, Kate, as Batwoman, tries to stop Nocturna, ends up getting drugged in the process, and it's kind of stuff. I'm actually surprised, when Sophie actually shows up later on, I was actually halfway expecting her to kind of take off Kate's mask. I almost expected that, but she didn't, because I guess she kind of respects her privacy. It's yeah, you wear the mask for a particular reason. I mean, it's well, she no longer suspects that woman to be Kate, so I think the mystery doesn't really concern her anymore, because she believes in what Batwoman does, which obviously the whole thing of Jacob's now back in control and everything, he got exonerated, and because now he thinks Alice is dead, which she goes to visit Beth's body, and he's yeah. The sad thing is, the real sad thing is that Jacob never got an opportunity to meet Beth. Never got to see the version of his daughter he wanted. A version of her that wasn't evil. The version of her that was good. He never got to know that side of her. He never got to meet this Beth like Kate did. That, Luke and even Mary had an opportunity to meet. It's actually kind of heartbreaking at the end of the day, with that whole situation. And even Sophie being it was always going to end this way. And he's yeah, but he feels hollow about it and everything. But obviously it's the city believes in a bat, and it's no, we can't have that. The fact of the matter is, someone gets to dress up, kind of cause whatever chaos they want to. We as a Crows need to make people recognize they need us. It's, once again, it's and it's something I brought up before, last episode, of the whole complicated thing of what the dynamic between Kate and Sophie is, because once again, Sophie is definitely in the kind of Commissioner Gordon in this particular part. Like I said, with the complicated situation of obviously her and Kate dated, so there's an intimate thing there, but it still kind of has that same dynamic of she's the only law enforcement that kind of backs up. I mean, I don't know how the GCPD in general feels, because that depends on like I said, the continuity of it, because we don't know if there has been a Gordon in this continuity or whatnot. But obviously the Crows are kind of the top-notch security and stuff like that, because there was no bat, so they kind of filled that hole for the past 3 years. But it's still, it makes you wonder. Regardless, Kate ends up, trying to draw Nocturna out by, opening up her club and everything and inviting a lot of people, because this is the best way to draw Nocturna out, because it seems like this type of club life is kind of what attracts her, which I love that, Kate references it's oh yeah, curse, and Luke is yeah, curse. Oh yeah, I thought you said purse. That makes sense. She's you have no idea what I'm talking about, dude. He's yeah, no idea. She kind of walks by, just kind of taps him on the shoulder, okay. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, which is kind of interesting too. That's got to be nice. I mean, granted, your opening of the club was meant to be a it's a sting operation, which under those circumstances, Sophie shows up and it's yo, Sophie looking good. It's it's holy crap. It's cause she's always in uniform, so it's holy, this is aside from flashbacks, this is the only time we've ever seen her in just dolled up for the club and everything. I mean, even later on in casual clothes, it's you don't see her in that. She, like I said, she's usually in uniform and everything, so it's just kind of, or in a suit and everything. So, but even, I guess this is the first time Luke's ever seen her. He's whoa, that's Sophie? So she broke up with you, right? Because I'm because he's almost yo, Kate, if you, what? Walking away from Sophie? Look at Sophie, dude. And obviously for Kate, she's just kind of okay, because of all this, you're never coming out of the Bat Cave again. Especially because like there's this lady named Ellie who wakes up. I have to look into it. I'm probably super mistaken. That actress whoever it is, kind of looks like. Her name's Anna, but I can't remember her last name. The actress who played Bo in Lost Girl. I'm pretty sure that's not her, but she kind of reminds me of her. I don't know. It was just interesting. But they were kind of getting on flirty and stuff like that. And I love Kate being like, no. I mean, just Sophie's just kind of like, playing, just trying to suss her out to find Nocturna. And it's like, oh yeah, oh, and then she's like, nothing's that funny. And it's just like, oh, look at you, kind of actually being a little bit of the jealous ex. And she's like, I don't want to go down there because I will look like the jealous ex. It's like, yeah, dealing with that or trying to stop a serial killer. Which one is it? So she ends up... I wonder, I think it's interesting because I think Sophie might have caught on to what Kate was doing, because Kate ends up cutting her finger and then Sophie's just kind of looking like, and I think Kate kind of nods her head. So I don't know whether Sophie really understood, but it turns out Ellie totally wasn't the case, because Ellie ends up being like, oh no, she hates blood or something. I was like, is that kind of a front? And it's like, oh no, she isn't. She totally turns out not to be Nocturna. It is interesting because Mary was trying to give her the hookup by being like, oh yeah, I gotta go somewhere else. And Sophie's like, what are you doing? And Mary bounces, and his soul runs into her. She's like, oh my god, like I'm one of your followers and stuff like that. Oh. And then Luke shows up. It's like, oh, hey, Mary, I thought you said you have to wait for you outside. She's like, oh, I thought you told me to meet. It's like, oh, are you two together? And it's like, yeah. Luke's like, I'm her boyfriend. She's like, my brother. And it's like, oh, okay. And so it's like, oh. And like Luke kind of almost takes offense to it. It's like, you are so against me even pretending to be your boyfriend. And she's just kind of like, and she's like, is that tie glowing in the dark? And it's like, yeah. She's like, that's actually pretty. She's like, I actually kind of love it. And then the whole Kate thing, like, wait, Kate's in your ear. Like, why do you need that? It's just like, because Kate's needy. I love that. There was also the situation of Alice and Kate's first interaction subsequently, since all this, and it's like, do you have Mouse? Because, Mouse is gone, so she thinks like, oh, the right assumption, she assumed that Kate took him, but turns out not to be the case. And now it turns into the whole thing of like, the confrontation about like the fact of the matter is you're going to take someone over me. But once again, it's like she was you. She was what I wanted. It was hopeful that you could be. All the good. She was good and kind. She was everything. She was my sister again. It's not like, oh, this isn't someone I didn't know. This is the Beth I knew. If you hadn't become Alice, this is who you would have been. I know it. So like that's why it wasn't like a situation of like, oh, I picked some stranger over you. I picked you over you. I picked who you were before, who you should be, who you would be if you hadn't become Alice, But and obviously because of all this, you can tell Alice is becoming a little unraveled, because like obviously she's putting one of Mouse's faces on a mannequin, and it's like, say something, Mouse. And she's talking about because it's like, oh, she acts like I'm supposed to like, you talked about the fact is of letting her get in my head. It's like, yeah, I did. Like the fact of the matter is I kind of ignored you, but no more my little Mouse, so obviously, I mean, to be fair, Alice wasn't stable to begin with, but I'm sure this is a very big blow to your ego, because there was a part of her that was so desperate, like, no. At the end of the day, Kate's going to choose me. Like, it's all going to be a happily ever after type of story. The fact of the matter is I'll get my revenge and I'll have my sister again. But now knowing, like, your sister was literally going to let you die, you were on the verge of death, that if Cartwright hadn't killed the other Beth, you would be dead right now. So there's that whole situation. So I mean, because even Kate was like, the crows think you're dead. You have a second chance with your life, but it's like, Alice isn't going to take it. But then, like, Alice gets jumped by Nocturna, because I guess she found her in the alleyway. And it was interesting, because at first she was like, oh, yeah, like, I love it being like, okay, you don't want to get caught. I don't want the crows to know that I'm alive. So how about we just kind of let bygones kind of be bygones, basically, and kind of give it a wink, like, come on, let's. But it's like, no. So we end up finding out Natalia Knight is Nocturna, that basically she has this condition where, like, she can't be out in the sun. She has a very, like, sensitive skin, and it turns out also Like basically because of her kidney issues, she can't process blood, so she needs constant blood. Like her dad, who was taking care of her, died fairly recently, so she became Nocturna to kind of basically compensate for that. So that's why she's stealing people's blood to save herself. So it's interesting to find out to me that kind of feels like a Gotham thing of like a villain so desperate to save. I mean, different villains have their different reasons. I mean, everything Mr. Freeze does is for his wife Nora. So I mean, it's not too strange, but it seems very befitting with just the tone of Gotham. That'd be like her motivation, But luckily, but then like you had Alice suggesting like, oh no, go after somebody else. Oh, you're going after me. I'm kind of like basically saying like I'm low grade blood. You want some like high class blood, and I'm like, even I was like, who the hell are you suggesting? I was like, are you suggesting your sister or something? And it's like, no. It turns out she was suggesting Mary, and it makes sense in the long run because Mary's blood has that stuff still circulating in her system, so it would have made her blood very delicious, I guess. It was Alice's attempt to save her own hide, but it is a situation of, because Luke had brought up the fact is that, Nocturna is one serial killer, but Alice is a serial killer on her own because she has a complicated situation of like, she is a complicated situation for you. Like your feelings for her are always going to kind of be a hindrance against you, but obviously Kate's trying to make it seem like, no, that's not the case at all. Like, I don't feel anything. I'm not, I made my choice, and, Alice isn't worth saving. I kind of solidified that in my mind. And then obviously her being, like, Kate being there with Alice and being like, why did she spare you and everything? It's like, because even Kate saying very coldly, you should be dead right now. She's like, I know, Kate. Like basically, like you made that perfectly clear when you chose. Because for her, it's like because she ends up talking about later on. It's like for once I chose someone else, chose to look after me when no one else was. Because because she feels like Kate has failed her time and time again. It's like first you didn't save me before and you left me. It blamed her for not it's like we were twins and you didn't feel anything. You didn't know I was there, and now this. It's just one thing after another. I was actually super surprised for her to show up like that. And I was like, wait, why? You hate Mary. But I guess there's also like this complicated thing where she is kind of like, Mary was kind of born of a terrible situation. And I think it's almost like Alice is trying to repeat that with Mary, kind of like make Mary more like her, kind of make her broken like her. But obviously, like Mary probably wouldn't be too happy if she found out Alice is the one that kind of basically helped her, gave her some of her blood and everything. But I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you show up and help? And it's like, oh, I was like, are you trying to get back on Kate's good side or something? Luckily, Kate was able to stop, Nocturna. That is kind of sad when, Kate using her phone to kind of basically the light from it, the light sensitivity that Nocturna has, it literally burns her face like an actual vampire. It's like it sucks. I mean, it's like, because for her, it's like all these people, like they got to live their lives, and what do they do with it? They're kind of partying and basically, they're like wasting the life that was given to them. They're like putting all this terrible stuff in there, like basically drinking and probably getting high and stuff like that. But it's like me, I never actually had an opportunity to live, but it's like, it doesn't justify you going to the lengths that you're going to just to survive and everything, So, but then, Mary, because Kate was kind of, I love even Mary kind of being, Batwoman saved me. And she's also, it's kind of cool to think about the fact is that Batwoman went to a store and got me cookies. That is kind of cool to think about. But the fact of the matter is, she had been like, oh yeah, it's because Nocturna was talking about something, the thing in my blood. And I'm curious to see, is that going to be like a thing going forward, or will it ever eventually work its way out of her system? Because it was kind of a while in between before it went to Beth, so I guess it's still circulating in her system. I wonder, will it ever maybe it will take a while before it completely gets diluted out, or maybe it's always going to be a part of her system. Who knows? But I thought it was so interesting how, it's like, all right, so Kate ends up confronting Alice, and it's like, yeah, and it's like, don't forget, I also did save Mary, and it's like, for Kate, it was just all kind of like the last straw, because it's at the end of the day, it's like you don't do anything, you're not selfless, you do everything for your own reasons. And the fact of the matter is, I'm done. Like, you're trying to make me feel guilty over it, and I don't. It's like, yeah, but the fact that you're saying that I'm like plaguing at your guilt must mean you do feel some guilt over me. And she's like, but the fact of the matter, basically laying it down like, I'm done. I'm done with everything with you. I'm done trying to save you because you're not worth it. Like, all the times I went back to save you, pulling you out when the vehicle went off, like, I saved you then. It's like, I'm done. I regret like going back over and over. I'm like laying it down like that. And Alice is like, but what if I don't want you to be done with me? Basically, Alice, no matter how pissed she is, she wants Kate to have her back. She's like, I still want you to fight for me regardless. It's like, the fact of the matter is, even if you might not change me, at least you fighting for me means that you care about me, so it's a very twisted thing that's going on there, because no matter what, Kate still feels that tug that she was talking about, because it's like, regardless of how she tries to put up this barrier, she still cares, just like Jacob still cared regardless. But now, I didn't even talk about it earlier, but I even love that. I thought it was a funny moment where like Nocturna was like, oh, the bat and a vampire, like we should kind of, it sounds like a duo. And a Batwoman being like, I work alone. And Luke is like, I heard that. She's like, shh. I love that. But the fact of the matter is, I'm curious to see where that kind of goes. I also thought it was kind of interesting that basically Alice figured it out when one of the people from her gang ended up bringing her files on the Dr. Campbell, but then she kind of pieces it together. She's like, 6 years ago, went on a sabbatical, then came back, divorced his wife, went into helping kids with burns and stuff like that. Like, it's like, okay. And then at a moment she says 6 years ago, and it's like, or should I say Carthage? So she's like, she knows it's Mouse's dad, and I'm like, so whatever it is that went down with Mouse's dad went down 6 years ago. So it's like, what happened 6 years ago? Is that when they were they captured by him the entire time? Or I would assume it has something to do with why Mouse was locked up in Arkham in the first one, because he was in Arkham like before Alice broke him out. So it's like, not unless that ended up happening afterwards. Like, I'm curious to find out like what made, because it had to be that 6 years ago thing that was like, oh, what happened around then? Plus the whole aspects of like, oh yeah, making faces, trying to help kids and stuff like that. And it's like, right, that's kind of what you did for Mouse and everything. So it's like, just the fact that she was able to piece that together pretty quickly was pretty interesting. So I'm interested to see kind of where that goes, because for her, it's like following him to get to Mouse. Because the thing is, he thinks he thinks Alice is dead. I mean, he fired the shot, but I mean, that's the sad thing too, is like, no one's going to be looking into who did it, because like even Jacob's kind of like, well, she made a lot of enemies, someone got the shot off even if we didn't, so they're definitely not going to look into it. Once again, they think Alice is dead, case is closed, but it still bothers Jacob because he's even looking at the picture of her in her case file. But obviously for Kate, she wants to try and find the person but responsible. So worlds are going to collide again anyway. And it's definitely going to be interesting when, Kate ends up crossing paths with her, Alice on this whole situation, as they're basically going after the same person. Might end up being a team up in the future. We'll ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. But obviously, another interesting development to this whole thing is like, it seems like Mary finally pieces it together, because it's like, wait, ketamine in your system, and then she thinks about, because like Kate was like, oh, can you run my blood? It's like, oh yeah, I'm sick. And it's like, wait, she had K in her blood and everything, and then it's like, wait, what? And then like the earpiece from Luke, and she's like, you're totally Batwoman. So it's like, Mary now knows. That's definitely gonna be, I'm interested to see how Mary's gonna play this, because obviously she's kept this secret from literally, Jacob and Sophie. And to be fair, because Sophie had told her, like, yeah, I helped Batwoman, don't tell your dad. And it's like, Mary is kind of like, no, she's a fan of Batwoman, so she'd never turn on her. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see how, like I said, I'm wondering, is she going to be sly about it, or is she going to be straight up about it next episode? It's going to be interesting. But, and speaking of Sophie, things get complicated because obviously there's video of her helping Batwoman, and Jacob's kind of upset at her about it. But it's like, no, I think we should work together. But Jacob's like, no, because like for Sophie, it's like we literally kind of ruined our good name with the town, with Gotham, because of the way we turned this basically into a police state hunting down Alice, because we were so aggressive, because you kind of wanted us to be aggressive. It kind of turned a lot of people away from us. But the fact of the matter is Batwoman is doing good if we work together with her. But Jacob is so... I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe because he just doesn't like the bats because of that whole, much like Kate, like she blamed Batman until she found out about the truth, because Jacob doesn't know the truth about everything that went down all those years ago with his wife and, Beth. I think that's more so what this is about, because Batwoman is a reminder, because someone goes outside the law, it's because of them. It's like, even doesn't matter what Batman was trying to do, he interfered, and potentially in Jacob's mind it's like he made it worse. So it's like maybe that's what that, I would assume that all stems from that. I completely forgot to talk about this last episode too, but there's that dude that Jacob was like, the dude who saved Jacob from Alice's boyfriend, I would assume ex at this point, but yeah, he saved him, and it's kind of like, yeah, you're gonna owe me. I'm like, okay, so that hasn't come back up, but like I said, I totally forgot to bring that up last episode, but it's like, I'm sure that's gonna circle back around soon enough. But basically he's telling Sophie to basically choose between, because the timing couldn't be worse, because it's like, oh, Batwoman calls her to tell her, hey, I got Nocturna, and it's like, she's doing good work, but for him it's like, you basically have to choose whether you're going to be with the Crows or whether you're siding with Batwoman, and kind of suspends her while she's making that decision. And I think because for him, he feels like there's very few people he can trust anymore, because, but it's at the same time, it's like, you got to reckon, because Sophie ends up using the bat signal to call, Batwoman, and she's like, I thought that was banned. It's like, well, I couldn't slide into your DMs. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, for Sophie, it's like, she is literally second in command to such a large operation, and for her, it's like, I can't just like throw that away, which Batwoman's like, no, I get it, like, I'll keep my distance and stuff like that. But for Sophie, it's like she believes in what Batwoman's doing, because it's like you're making a difference. Once again, it's like you're giving the city something we couldn't give them, and she doesn't say this, but that's the whole point. You give them hope, and maybe that's what Jacob's also pissed about too, because he wasn't able to instill that in the city, but Batwoman, someone in a bat suit, was able to do that when she could, so I think it probably potentially could stem from that. But then her and Sophie kiss, I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, but that's complicated, because it's like a whole, like, oh, MJ and Spider-Man kissed, and it's like, oh, that's a whole thing, but MJ doesn't know that you are Spider-Man. So in this case, it's like, oh, it's like, oh, you kind of deal with your ex a little bit, but she doesn't know it you, so it's complicated, because it's almost like you want to be with her, but she's in a relationship with Batwoman, but you can't let her know that you are Batwoman, so that turns into a whole complicated thing too, especially because there was that other lady that was, Ellie. It might be a thing where Sophie ends up choosing the Crows, and she ends up does distance herself from Batwoman, or maybe Kate decides to do that. I don't know, because juggling the whole Alice thing, because it's like you're over saving her, but at the same time it's like maybe you're not. Now your sister knows your identity, and like I said, what what ends up happening, more specific, your half sister, but why get caught up in semantics? Mary now knows, so it's like that. There's just a lot kind of going on with that, and I'm curious to see ultimately where all that's going to end up taking us. I am curious to see what Sophie's going to choose, and I think she might choose the Crows. Who knows? Not unless they bring Sophie into the fold on this situation. I don't see that happening, but, we'll have to see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.